Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of West Berkshire Council's Health and Wellbeing Board. I'm Councillor Alan McCrow and I'm the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board. Before we start, I'd like to explain for the benefit of members of the public who may be watching that today's meeting is hybrid, which means that there's people in the chamber and also people can be watching online. We have a quorum of board members in the council chamber and other board members and substitutes attending remotely. Members attending today include Councillor Heather Codling. We haven't got Councillor Ginny, I don't think, have we? No. Councillor David Marsh, is he?
He's online.
It's online. Councillor Vicky Poole, who's here. Councillor Joe Stewart, Helen Clark, Paul Coe, Anne-Marie Dodds, Matthew Hensby, Jessica John Doe Evans, Superintendent Helen Kenny, Dr. Janet Lippett, Gail Muirhead, Sean Murphy, April Babili, Gary Paulson, Dr. Heike Veltman, Helen Williamson and Fiona Werby. Welcome all. Only board members who are in the council chamber can take part in voting. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. Gordon Oliver is the clerk for the meeting, and David Cook is the Zoom host. Sorry if I can say it. Please note there will be a planned test of the fire alarm at 10 o'clock. First of all, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, Chairman, we've had apologies from Councillor Lee Dillon and Councillor Vicky Poole is substituting, and we've had apologies from Sarah Webster and Helen Clark is present as her substitutes, and we've also had apologies from Professor John Ashton.
Thank you. Move on to item 2, the minutes. Are members happy to approve the minutes, or do any members have any issues that they'd like to raise? Yeah. Could I have a proposer to accept the minutes, please? Councillor Heather Codling, thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you. Could I show everybody in favour of approving the minutes, please? Thank you. They're approved. And move on then to item 3. Could invite the board to note progress with the actions. Are there any further updates or questions in relation to any of the actions, please? Okay. Do we need to move? Okay. Item 4. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? Joanne and Dr. Hyde.
Some feedback. Yeah.
Sorry?
We're getting some feedback, is it?
I don't think it's me. Sorry. Sorry. Is that better?
No.
Has anybody else got the speaker on? Could everybody check they haven't got the speaker on the laptop? Yeah. Sorry, declarations of interest.
I'll speak over the feedback. Yes, I would like to declare an interest as my husband works for the Royal Berkshire NHS Foundation Trust. He is head of contracts management. So in terms of items that come to this board, I feel that it should not prevent me from taking part in discussion or voting unless it is discussion about commissioning of services, where there may be a conflict of interest. I do have to say, he and I do not discuss things at home. We have other things to talk about, but I think, and I want to be consistent across all council forums. So if we could have that as a standing declaration of interest, so I don't have to bore you with this every time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Heike Veltman. I'm a GP at one of the local practices. And so my declaration is regarding the pharmaceutical, the commissioning of pharmacists that we'll be discussing today.
Thank you. Can we move on then to item 5, public questions? I'd like to thank all the members of the public who have submitted questions today. Your question will appear on screen and will be answered by the relevant board member. You will then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, but please remember that that supplementary must be to clarify the response given and not to introduce any new business. We have only 6 questions submitted by 2 people, and we will answer the questions submitted by the first person, followed by the questions submitted by the second person. Please note that the time limit for public questions is restricted to 30 minutes. If your questions have not been answered in that time, you'll receive a written response within 5 clear working days of the meeting. The responses given either verbally at the meeting or in writing will be published on the council's website in due course. Thank you. Move on, please, to question A.
Mark Knight is online, so he should be admitted.
And,
Yep. I believe he's joined the meeting now.
so who's
It's Mark Knight.
responding?
You are. This is the first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Apologies. It's Janet Lippett from
Right. So Dr. Gary Lippett.
Janet Lippett.
Sorry.
It's your line. Janet Lippett.
Sorry, I beg your pardon for the delay. Sorry,
Janet is available.
so it's available, but I'd like to answer the question.
Sorry.
Would you like me to answer the question?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm unable to turn my screen on because it's the host has turned the video off, but it's Janet Lippett. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at the Royal Berkshire NHS Foundation Trust. Can people hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Good. Okay. So thank you very much to Mark Knight for the question. I have prepared a response. So the redevelopment of the Royal Berkshire NHS Hospital is of critical importance to providing high quality healthcare services to all the communities of Berkshire. Over the last few months, we've been actively engaging with the new hospitals programme to secure the support we need to be able to progress and to understand the implications of the centralised approach to design and procurement of new hospitals that the Department of Health and Social Care has begun to release. This has naturally led to a period where our external activities have appeared quieter. Having made some positive progress in this area, we anticipate that by 2024, we'll see us engaging more with our population and stakeholders over the future location and service offering of the redeveloped hospital. This will naturally see us undertake detailed quantitative and qualitative analysis of how different groups will be affected by the new hospital. We will invite people to participate in this and we'll be keen to discuss the output of it with partners, including the board. Sorry, there we go. You can see me now. Where was I? So our clinical services strategy underpins all the work on the new hospital. At the heart of the clinical services strategy is a commitment to continue to expand the range of ambulatory, diagnostic and outpatient services we offer from West Berkshire Community Hospital, Bracknell Health Space and Townlands Memorial Hospital, and to invest in the delivery of services in patients' homes and local communities through our digital programme and collaboration with primary care networks. Since 2017, this approach to deliver more care in the community has led to an expansion of our services at West Berkshire Community Hospital and a number of important developments, including the new renal unit, the new cancer centre and investments in diagnostic equipment, which has expanded the range of tests we can provide out west for the West Berkshire population without them having to travel into Reading. We anticipate this continuing over the coming years, supported by trusts and government investment and the generous donations from many local charities. There will always be a range of services that it's not appropriate for us to provide from a community hospital, requiring patients and their carers to have to travel to Reading. We recognise that accessing our site can be a challenge, and we'll be considering this in the work we do to appraise options for the new hospital. In the past year, we've made several changes to improve patient parking on site, and we now offer a park and ride service from Mere Oak and Thames Valley Park direct to the hospital for those patients, families and staff for whom it's appropriate. Details of this service are available on our website.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Knight?
No, thank you. That was a very useful outline. Pleased with that. So no, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Can we move on then to question D, asked by Mr. Knight, to be answered by Helen Clark from the ICB?
Okay, thank you. So the question related to the item on community pharmacy. And again, I've prepared a response on that. So the assessment of whether a pharmacy or pharmacies are able to absorb additional demand caused by the closure of another service is complex and includes input from the ICB, our local public health teams, regarding things such as travel times, opening hours and services provided, and also from Community Pharmacy Thames Valley, which is the organisation that represents our local pharmacists. We're aware that at times our residents face longer than ideal waits to collect prescriptions, and this can be due to a range of reasons, and we are working with pharmacies to ensure that their services are easily accessible to those who need them, including at times of high demand. If dispensing errors have occurred, then we would expect these to be reported and investigated in line with due process. Overall, our assessment has concluded that existing provision is not inadequate, and a further update on pharmacy provision across Berkshire West, focusing on the resilience of that provision, will be discussed at the Health and Wellbeing Board meeting in February.
Thank you, Helen. Do you have a supplementary, please, Mr. Knight?
Not exactly. It very much as I thought. I must admit I am worried about the dispensing errors, particularly with batch medication, because there seems to be nowhere we can go to report across the piece errors. It's either with a doctor or it's either with a chemist. Each of them often tell you a different story, and actually the process needs to be looked at. No one's quite sure of where you can do that.
Okay, shall I just respond on that point? So as I've said in the answer, there are processes in place for those errors to be investigated and any appropriate action taken. But if patients have concerns, I would suggest that those are reported to our PALS service, Patient Advice and Liaison Service, who will be able to liaise with the pharmacies involved as appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we move on then to question B, asked by Paula Saunderson, to be answered by me. Is Paula online, please?
Yes, she is.
Thank you. So thank you for your question. There's some positive progress to report in this area, but there remains much more to do. We have Dementia Friendly West Berkshire, a commissioned service funded by Public Health and Wellbeing. They work with partners and communities to set up memory cafes, which will become locally embedded within the community. One new cafe is now running with support, and plans are in place to begin work to develop a second cafe in a new area. The big dementia conversation is scheduled for the 20th and 29th of February at Shaw House in Newbury, and all adult social care staff are encouraged to attend on one of the 2 days. The same session is being run twice to enable staff to attend on different days to support business delivery. The session will include lived experience in care and awareness raising of the role of unpaid carers in our community. It will also provide signposting information to all the community activities that are dementia friendly and support people living with dementia and their unpaid carers. Membership of Dementia Friendly West Berkshire has increased to 60 members. The Carers Strategy Group, which is not focused specifically on dementia, continues to meet to coordinate work to support all carers across the district. Do you have a supplementary question, please?
Well, that's good news about the progress. I understand that there is, Sue Butterworth is looking at putting some form of community hubs and cafes in some of the rural villages, which would obviously be something that dementia carers could come into. So I'd hope you would support that approach, because there's not actually much out. When I was stuck in Boxford for 3 years as a dementia carer, there wasn't much help for me out there. Sorry. So, yeah, basically is continue the good work. I've got a couple of suggestions, so I'll write into you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we move on then to question C, also by Paula Saunderson, to be answered by Helen Clark, please?
Yes, so thank you for your further question relating to actions being taken to support carers of people with dementia. Having reviewed the actions listed in the delivery plan included in the papers under objective 2.2, it appears that the bulk of these are currently focused on young carers, although we have also identified a number of actions which are not currently proceeding around support for carers of people with dementia. We will therefore revisit all of these actions through the newly re-established Berkshire West Mental Health Programme Board to ensure that the programme has a strong focus on the dementia pathway. And with regard to Admiral nurses, this is not a role that most PCNs currently have, but we will pick up a discussion with the lead PCN GP for workforce to consider if there is merit in exploring this further.
Thank you. That's, am I still on? Yeah, I'm not muted. That's great, thank you. I think as I go through this journey, which is now 6 years long, there is a need for more targeted support for people who are involved with or looking after people in the later stages, because a lot of the dementia stuff is about activities, and then when you get bedbound people that are doubly incontinent, can't feed themselves, you're not going to be able to take them or yourself to many activities. So having something like an Admiral nurse, or some kind of bespoke facility where we can phone up with the difficult questions about what to do, would, I think, be of benefit to a lot of people across the whole Buckingham, Berks and Oxon network. And also I receive dementia care newsletters from Oxfordshire, so maybe that's something that you could look at at a BOB level, to have newsletters specifically for dementia carers across the piece.
Thank you for those further points. So I will make sure that both of those, the point with regards to later stage dementia and the question of newsletters, is considered in the discussion that I mentioned within the Mental Health Programme Board. Thank you.
Fine, thank you very much.
I'll move on then to question E, also asked by Paula Saunderson, to be answered by Paul Coe, please.
Yeah, and thank you, Paula. I hope you're well. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Paul.
I've taken a bit of a punt in terms of, you've asked, can you outline these details in general? If I haven't gone into as much detail as you like, you've got my email address, we can follow up, I'm sure. But here's the general detail on this. So the total of Better Care Fund income for 23-24 is £15.9 million. And for 24-25, it's £16.3 million. The fund is used in a variety of ways, but to fund activities either by health services or by the local authority or by a combination of both. So it's been quite difficult to, and it's not in the intent of the fund, obviously, is to make health and local authority work more successfully together. So I haven't tried to unpick hugely, this is for the local authority, this is for health, because a lot of this is done jointly, very much done jointly. And of course, all the planning is agreed jointly as well. In terms of, there's there's a quite a range in terms of, there are some large amounts of money spent on certain areas and some small amounts spent on discrete areas, but I'll give you hopefully a flavour for the way that the money is used. So approximately £7 million is used for the delivery of direct care services, so care home placements, care at home and that sort of thing. So there is delivery of care. About £2 million is used to adapt people's homes through the Disabled Facilities Grant. So I think that's a really important way of helping people to manage at home as per their entitlements. Approximately £1.6 million is spent on reablement and rehabilitation services specifically. So trying to help people to manage their lives more successfully. We've got about £1.3 million on a variety of preventative schemes. I think one of the things from a personal perspective, I think it's really, really critical, and I think we do it quite well in West Berkshire, is finding a balance between early interventions to prevent needs increasing, helping people in a crisis to stay out of hospitals where possible, helping people to get out of hospitals where they're in acute settings. So balance for me is really important, and as I said, I think we do it fairly well. We've got something you're probably particularly interested in, Paul. Approximately £800,000 is committed to services specifically for carers themselves. As I say, there's then sort of small pots of money. So, for example, we've got money spent on data sharing, money for program management, or specific functions such as our mental health link worker. So hopefully that gives you a flavour. As I say, I'm more than happy to go into more detail if that would be helpful to you personally. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, just so, where does respite care for carers? Is that in this budget or is that in another budget?
So I can look at the detail and come back to you offline if that's okay. So
yeah, I just worry that there isn't enough ability for people to actually put, you know, in the stages that I'm talking about, that person needs to go somewhere. If you're going to try and have a holiday or a break, the person needs to be placed somewhere whilst you have that break. And I'm just not, from my interactions with other carers, it's not just me, I feel that we're not quite getting to the mark on that one. So yeah, a bit more explanation by an email would be fine. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. I will do.
Can we move on then to question F, also asked by Paula's son, to be answered by April Pebbody, please.
One's working, that's fine. Sorry. Thank you for the question. So the Older Persons Day event was a partnership piece of work between West Berkshire Council, Age UK Berkshire and Dementia Friendly West Berkshire. The event took place at St Nicholas Church in Newbury on the 5th of October 2023. All three partners undertook communication about the event. Dementia Friendly West Berkshire included the event on their monthly calendar, which is shared with clients, members and other partners and is publicly available on the Dementia Friendly West Berkshire website. West Berkshire Council included information in the Residents' Bulletin of the 27th of September 2023. In addition, we ran social media posts to promote the event. Flyers were also shared with Dementia Friendly West Berkshire and Ageing Well Task Group partners, social prescribers in the primary care networks and adult social care teams for onward promotion. Age UK Berkshire also undertook their own additional communications and social media promotion. Is there a supplementary question?
Yeah, I think during that period we stopped receiving the newsletters that Vicky used to send to us. So basically that's removed the proactivity from your side to us. So we would have to be reliant on going onto the website and looking at the DFWB website ourselves. So can I make a request that that facility is reinstated now that you're in post?
Thank you for that additional question. I'll take that back. Sue Butterworth is the chair of our Ageing Well task group. Paula, I'll take that back to her and try and find out a little bit more about what's happened and obviously try to rectify that for you.
Yeah, you know, I don't know how you do it, but we've got the facility to sign up for newsletters of various sorts coming out of West Berkshire Council. So to have that for the DFWB as well means that, you know, the proactivity is there from you to us rather than very busy carers having to try and remember to go and look at things.
Thank you. I will take that back to Sue.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. So that's the end of public questions. Item 6 is petitions. Have we received any petitions, please?
No petitions received, Chairman.
Sorry, move on to item 7, membership of the Health and Wellbeing Board. Membership of the board is on an organisational basis, but we have a standing agenda item to note any changes in personnel, but there have been no changes since the last meeting. So we'll move on then to item 8, which is the place-based partnership update. So I'd like Helen Clark, please, to give us an update.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper provides an update on the work of the Integrated Care Board and also of the Berkshire West Place-Based Partnership, which is part of that integrated care system. It's intended to be a monthly report or the frequency of the meetings, and so it would be brought in this format on a regular basis going forward. I'll just highlight some sort of key points from the report, if that's okay. I won't go through it in too much detail. So some of the key things covered, firstly, it highlights that the ICB's board meeting took place in public on the 21st of November, and a link is provided to the papers from that meeting. It then goes on to talk about work that is currently underway to agree some shared system goals for the coming year. These goals will link in with the integrated care strategy and also with the joint forward plan developed by NHS organisations. And following an event on the 30th of October, which involved senior leaders from the partner organisations across the ICS, a proposed set of shared goals have been found and have been agreed and published on the ICB website. These cover a range of areas relating to our strategic objectives, such as addressing variance and inequality, child and adolescent mental health, CVD, population health management, and working together more efficiently, aligning estates and workforce objectives, for example. And we have asked for partner organisations to comment further on those goals during November and December. The paper also highlights the work that is underway on the Bob primary care strategy, which aims to set out a model for future resilient and sustainable primary care across the Bob area. And I wanted to highlight to members that as part of this, we are currently undertaking, let's wait a moment. Thank you. Sorry, yes, the primary care strategy. Is that finished? Yeah, good to go. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're currently undertaking an engagement exercise which runs to the 31st of January. And again, there is a link in the paper to the engagement page on which we're encouraging members of the public to post comments and ideas with regard to the future of primary care, and also to highlight that that engagement phase is being supported by a number of webinars and focus groups being run by Healthwatch. Linked to the primary care strategy, just to draw members' attention to the primary care access and recovery plan for Bob, which again has been published on the ICB website. This focuses particularly on access issues to primary care and has been developed in response to the National Primary Care Access Recovery Plan. We have also highlighted work that has gone on around the digital and data strategy and the implementation of that strategy, and provided information regarding a digital summit which was held in September in Reading, pulling together a range of organisations to talk about how we take that strategy forward. The report also highlights progress on the COVID and flu vaccination programmes. We've delivered, as part of the autumn programme, 370,000 COVID vaccinations and 470,000 flu vaccinations as in this phase of the campaign. And further information is provided with regard to the work that is being undertaken to address inequalities in uptake of vaccine and to target particular areas and groups of the population to encourage further uptake. Finally, within the paper, we've included some updates on the Berkshire West Place-Based Partnership and the development of our partnership working across Berkshire West. The first area to highlight is progress on the Community Wellness Outreach Service project, which is progressing well. Just as a reminder, this intends to offer further NHS health checks in community locations with a real focus on taking an outreach approach to targeting people who would potentially not otherwise access health checks. And the West Berkshire part of the project, I understand, is on track to start in the new year, and a further report will be brought to the Health and Wellbeing Board in due course. And then the final part of the paper just sets out some of the further work that we've been doing around governance, the development of the Mental Health Programme Board, which I've already mentioned, and how that fits in with our wider programme board structure, and a refreshed unified executive membership, which will enable us to focus more strongly on the key place priority programmes which we have identified. Currently, the Community Wellness Outreach Service is one such programme, and we're also focusing on same-day access models for primary care and intermediate care services. But there is an intention for the Unified Exec to review those priorities and further develop that programme of work. And again, we'll bring further update in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have any comments or questions, please? Thank you. Could we move on then to item 9? I'd like to invite Sean Murphy, the Service Lead for Public Protection, to present the report on the response to cost of living increases, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And apologies, I was late into the meeting. I was pulled in to a meeting elsewhere first thing. Yes, very happy to present this report. I think we've made a fair bit of progress, in fact, actually, since we were last together back in October, early October. And in fact, actually, since this particular paper was published, there was a new executive member ID decision basically published yesterday, which basically builds on some of the matters in this paper. So I'll start, if I may, with the where we've got to in terms of the distribution of the household support fund. So currently the distribution stands around 250,000 in terms of grants, but we are now proposing in the paper that's gone forward and has been published to make further distributions from the household support funds. I'm talking about 250,000 from the main funds. Obviously, there's money gone on preschool or school meal vouchers and various other initiatives, but we are now proposing to make a number of amendments to the way that the main fund is spent. So the first of those, as is set out in this report, is that we are going to work with a number of voluntary sector agencies, further develop the work with voluntary sector agencies, I should say, to look at distributing money that's needed for urgent needs such as food and energy costs and energy top-ups. So we will be having discussions the next week or so to flesh out how that will be delivered. There is a further £19,500 going to be put into the essential household goods scheme. So this is the scheme where people are supplied with white goods, cookers, beds, furniture, things that are needed basically because they've had a short notice. So we'll be working with Newbury Community Resource Centre to deliver that project and extend that project, which is a very, very successful project to date. A new area that we're looking at is support for those people that are in emergency accommodation. So we do have at any one time a number of people in emergency accommodation. and that number goes up and down. But obviously, when you've got families and things like this in hotel accommodation, we are looking at what we can do in terms of supporting them with food and hot food provision and things like that. We are looking at an amount of money to go into what we call the discretionary assistance fund. So this is to assist people who are moving into properties and need some support around things like carpets and curtains where the property hasn't got any of those things in place, or they need replacing. And we're working with colleagues at Sovereign around that. We are looking to make a grant payment to those people that only receive housing benefit. There are 695 or so currently in West Berkshire. So these are people who are not on universal credit. So they don't get any of the cost of living payments and things like this that are paid out to people on universal credit. So we're looking at how we can assist those. Some further targeted support for older people, or as the guidance called it, pensioners. So this is basically working with charities around support over the winter months, including hot meals, energy, and things like boiler and other repairs. And then finally, we're proposing to put some money into supporting both young carers and those leaving care. So that's the first thing to say, really, that there is now a comprehensive package. It's described in the report basically in broad terms, but in fact, actually, the paper has now been published that describes it in a bit more detail. Second thing is we've held a number of discussions. So we had a meeting with our colleagues at Greenham, and it was a funders meeting where we met some of the local charities. Again, we received presentations from Food Bank, from Soup Kitchen, from the community. I was going to say furniture project, but the community resource project, and we had a discussion about how we can work together, basically going forward as people that fund these organisations to provide support in the community. The other area, really, which I think we've had an input into, is that last Friday, Gary's on the call, I can see, but we had a successful meeting organised by the Volunteer Centre, and I'm grateful for that. With the voluntary sector, it was very well attended. I don't know, Gary, whether you chaired the meeting, whether you're perhaps better placed, if that's okay, Chair, for Gary to give us an update on his take on that.
That's fine, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, so this was the second of the third, actually, cost of living meetings held this year. The first one was the second was in October that we pulled together, and it was, I think, fair to say it was quite a pithy, frank meeting with some very strongly held views expressed. And the meeting that we had last week at Shaw House, again, about 35 different charities there, all who are working in the cost of living space. And I think fair to say that following the presentation that Sean undertook and Pete Evans, which was a response really to our meeting in October, that the proposals that Sean made about how the monies will be apportioned were very well met. And in fact, there was a resolution to accept those proposals from Sean, that the voluntary sector supported that way forward. So that was really very welcome. So it was a much more harmonious meeting, I think, on Friday last week. So thank you very much indeed, Sean, for the work you put into that. Greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Gary. So just really to say, it's also worth saying actually that the meeting was attended by a number of councillors as well, Chairman, including the leader and the portfolio holder for housing. So the other area that we're looking at as well, and we had a discussion yesterday, was looking at so we contribute as an authority from the Household Support Fund into a joint fund with Greenham Trust, basically which charities can also, the local voluntary sector can also apply for. We increased, I think I said at the last meeting, we're going to increase our contribution to that match funded appeal to 70,000. We have done that now. There was an individual decision which basically gave that effect. I spoke to Greenham Trust yesterday. They have now match funded that 70,000, so there is £140,000 available for local organisations to support people through the cost of living challenges that we've got. We're also looking at, alongside that, basically the criteria for accessing that grant. So up until now, primarily it's been for new projects. We're looking at ways basically that we can make that grant available to organisations for increased demand as a result over the winter period. Again, that is something that's subject to sign off next week. We should be able to develop. So I'll just sum up by saying this. So obviously some of the headline figures we've seen around inflation, things like this, there are some improvements. So some of the other figures that we've seen. So we know that energy costs are going up in January again. But you know, food and other kind of household things are expensive, as everybody on this call will know, and they have been going up and they continue to go up in price. You know, fuel has come down a bit, but it's still relatively high. I think the feedback we're getting from colleagues who across the council and also basically colleagues from the local voluntary sector is that basically there are a lot of people out there that are still facing a very tough time. So what I'm hoping we've put together is a package to provide that support through the winter months for those people. The last thing I'll say is that with the household support funds, what we don't know at this stage is whether there's going to be another round of it next year. So there was nothing in the autumn statement that talked about that. But we'll just have to wait and see. It was in the spring that we found out last year that there was to be another round. But for now, I think we've basically pulled together a package for the winter that hopefully will provide support for some of our most vulnerable. Thank you.
Chairman, can I just add that during the meeting, there was discussion about what we call this crisis. And we've been calling it the cost of living crisis, actually. But it was a point very well made. Actually, what we're looking at is poverty, and it was acknowledged actually by the entire room that most of us are affected by cost of living in some way, but most of us aren't affected by poverty, and that's actually what we're tackling. So we've resolved to call it, in fact, the Poverty and Cost of Living Meeting Forum in future.
Thank you. Do any members have any comments or any questions, please? Councillor Codling.
I think I'd like to echo what Gary's just said about calling it what it is, and it's poverty. And there are a lot of people struggling with this. I get ward members, constituents in my ward, wanting help. We point them in the direction of this particularly and other charities. But yeah, I think I endorse what Gary says, and maybe we should change what we're calling it on here.
Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Jessica Jundu-Evans, Director at the Corn Exchange Arts Centre. I recognise, Sean, that what you're talking about when we're discussing poverty is some quite basic and fundamental needs, but everyone needs a little bit of respite from that as well. So I just wanted to flag for those that didn't already know that the Corn Exchange has a Panto Pay It Forward scheme, which currently has some funds left, offering families, individuals, neighbours, members of the public free tickets to the theatre for those that otherwise couldn't afford to attend. So if anyone that you know of would be interested in attending the Panto that runs until the end of December, do get in touch with our team, because we do have that scheme still running. And similarly, we are currently trying to put in place a free supper club for families from the new year. So I will send further details about that as and when we have them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll help get that information out.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, please?
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. If I could just ask that our colleague from the Corn Exchange let us share that information on both of those points, actually, because particularly the free supper club, because we can share that with the other people that are working in that space. It's important that we all know what's going on in that space. So, and we can then publicise that in our bulletin to the voluntary sector.
Will do, Gary. It's currently in development, so we'll let you know as that progresses.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Councillor Poole.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually very interested to read this report because there is obviously a lot of poverty coming up to Christmas, and everyone's budgets are getting stretched. The thing that struck me, and I think it's already been highlighted today, is that there's lots of activity, but not necessarily visible to the public. And maybe we could look at something about being a single repository about where the information is and be able to signpost people so that we can just send them to a particular place so that we can help more people by providing more access.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I come back on that point? Because I think it's a very important point, actually. So one of the major organisations for signposting is the council. And in fact, actually, one of the things I should have mentioned as part of this is obviously we have a number of staff that are trained across the organisation in referral systems and things like that. We are looking at two elements of it. One of them is another round of training, basically, and briefings for more staff about referrals and making sure that we're able to signpost people to the relevant organisations that can help them. The second thing is we do have a campaign, I suppose, for want of a better word, a community engagement campaign coming up in the next few weeks as well, ahead of Christmas and as we go into the winter, basically to draw attention to the services that are available to support residents and also basically to promote effectively access to the household support fund, which of course is still available alongside all of these other measures. But the point you make is a very important point.
Thank you. Dr. Lippett, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's more we could do on the other side to actually signpost those of us who are in a more privileged position about what we can do to help. I've used Newbury Resource Centre a few times for donations and they're fantastic, but it can be really hard, having just done a round of home improvements again, it can be really hard to know where to donate things. I was interested to hear you talking about soft furnishings and curtaining and things like that. And I searched high and low on the various websites to see if I could find somewhere to donate, and it's really not very easy. So I think we could probably do a bit more around signposting that for those of us who are in the luxury position to be able to donate rather than needing to receive.
Yeah, that's also a very good point. I'll take that back as well, because obviously if we can match the need with the provision, that would be the absolute ideal. So yes, I'll take that back as well in our conversations that we'll be having over the next week or so with these organisations.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just raise one other thing, which there was one other thing which anybody that was at the meeting last week would have heard, and also very relevant to this discussion today, is the impact of, let's call it poverty, on health, on mental health, on physical health, and that comes through in almost every discussion that we have. And I note later on the agenda, obviously we've got an item about the next Health and Wellbeing Conference, and maybe that's something we can pick up there, Chair.
Thank you. So just one question I'd like to ask. There's a couple of charities in my area, and I suspect probably in other areas too, that provide things like white goods and help with things like carpeting and so on. And I was wondering if we interact with those charities who sometimes have difficulty identifying where the need actually is. If we could, sometimes signpost recipients, shall I say, to such charities. So, for example, there's the Tilehurst Poor Lands Charity in Tilehurst and the Dr. Ellison Trust in Thiel. And as I said, I suspect there's similar charities too.
Chairman, I'm happy to advise on that. First of all, if you wanted to put them both in touch with me, because we have got a database of those types of charities. A few weeks ago at the West Berkshire Community Hospital, we held a charitable trust morning. We had 6 of those little charitable trusts all in one room, and we drove in social workers, so to speak, through publicity, and we were absolutely rammed with social workers coming in to find out about these little charitable trusts who support individuals in need. But they tend to work in isolation, these little groups, and just in parishes, and sometimes their remit is incredibly narrow. But nevertheless, we can still put them out there because they often meet the need you've said, certainly white goods and carpets and so forth. So if you want to put those in touch with me, I'll make sure they get an invite to the next funders session that we do.
I will indeed. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. It was just to pick up on Sean's point about mental health financial problems, and the Mental Health Action Group that is one of our streams of activity to look at where we can help and support, in particular because it's recognised that if you are in financial distress, then mental health will be affected. I think it's fair to say, and obviously Adrian Barker, who's leading on this, isn't in the room today, I don't believe. But we have struggled quite a lot to get engagement from all sorts of different partners to be able to actually move things forward. And I think in some cases, you think something's going to be very tangible. For example, how to help people access services that advise on debt and those sorts of things. But it can be those services themselves are also oversubscribed and really struggling. So I think it's a great point that you make, Sean, and I do think it would be something really valuable to have at the conference. And I would recommend that we bring Adrian Barker and Rachel Johnson, who have been leading on this, into that conversation to see if we can have something that is a useful, effective discussion or workshop or whatever it is that we decide to do so that we can actually make some progress. Thank you.
April.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say as well, Sean, thinking about the impact on health and well-being and people's health, for us to promote some of the free physical activity opportunities that we have that don't cost anything. We have a fantastic volunteer-led walking programme across West Berkshire, and also another fantastic volunteer-led free running programme that we have for people who haven't done running before. So there's some really good initiatives where people can interact with others, come out, do some physical activity, and it's all free. So I think that would be really good for us to promote that as part of this as well.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, sorry to have the floor again. Yeah, so this year we've been undertaking a series of consultations around mental health pathways. We've been doing this work for BHFT, and our report is now in draft form. It'll be going to BHFT in a few weeks. This has been a concentrated piece of work, really, right across the district, from Theale to Hungerford, across ensuring that voluntary sector providers and who support other people who are using mental health pathways have had a say about their experiences with mental health pathways. It is just everything. Everywhere you turn, everywhere you look now, we're talking about mental health. So I think this report that we'll be producing, which has been written by an expert, will make for a very interesting reading. And actually, I'd like to say also we've been supported with Adrian Barker as well, who's been coming along to each of the meetings as well to help us scribe and collate the information that's coming in. But I don't want this to be forgotten when it comes to the conference.
Thank you. Sean?
Well, thank you, Chairman. I was just reflecting on some of the observations in the meeting today, and in fact, some of my own observations over the last 12 months have been involved, 12 months or so have been involved with the whole issue around cost of living and the impacts on the community. There is so much going on out there, and going back to Councillor Stewart's point about engagement as well on that, it just feels like there is a piece of work to be done to map all of this. You know, that there is at the moment what we're doing is we're responding to things as they come up. We know what we've got a really good grasp of the issues, I think, from the conversations I've had. The organisations, the people on this board, basically have got a really good idea of what's going on, but it doesn't feel like it's all in one place. And it you know, I think if there's a kind of recommendation really from my involvement with this, that is something that feels we need to look at. We need to make sure that basically the resources that we're putting into it in terms of being organisations, so it's not just the councils, lots of other organisations and trusts put money into supporting provision, and we've heard from the Corn Exchange and others. But we need to make sure that is known about. We need to make sure that basically it's targeted, and we need to make sure that we're not duplicating stuff as well. So there just feels to me to be a job still to be done around mapping it all.
Thank you. I think from the conversations we've had this morning, that's correct, and there's something I think perhaps needs to pursue urgently.
Yeah.
Are there any other points or questions? Yeah, thank you very much, Sean. Perhaps if we can then move on to item 10, changes to pharmaceutical services, and April Purpody, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is it details recent and planned changes to pharmaceutical services in West Berkshire and advises the Health and Wellbeing Board on the implications for the West Berkshire Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment. So there's just some key points that are in the report that I would just like to highlight. So since the last meeting of the Health and Wellbeing Board, we have been notified of the following changes: reduced opening hours of Mortimer Pharmacy and the in-store pharmacy in Tesco Extra, Pinchington Lane, Newbury. Both are 100-hour pharmacies, but Mortimer now operates for 80 hours and Tesco 78 hours. Both still have late evening, Saturday and Sunday opening. Both pharmacies continue to provide the same services. So therefore, it's judged that there's no gap in provision has occurred as a result of those changes. Change of ownership from Lloyd's to LPSD 107 Limited at Thatcham Pharmacy, Birdwood Centre, Thatcham. There has been no change to the services provided or opening hours. No gap in provision is judged to have occurred. Closure of Boots, Bath Road, Thatcham. Boots will close on the 17th of February 24. Our analysis shows that there will still be good coverage in Thatcham of services that are currently provided by Boots. Halo Pharmacy is located just 100 metres away, so no households will be pushed outside the 1 mile stroke 20-minute travel time analysis that we use. The other two pharmacies in Thatcham are open for similar hours, including Saturdays. The LPC has provided assurance that there will be sufficient capacity at the other Thatcham pharmacies to cope with the displaced demand. No gap in provision is judged to have occurred. Unforeseen benefits application, Newbury Town Centre. Application for a new pharmacy has been received from CA Health Limited. Health and Wellbeing Board is a statutory consultee and is invited to make representations by the deadline of the 5th of January. Unforeseen benefits nature of the application reflects the fact that it was not captured in the P&A, the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment, and there is no currently identified gap in provision. CA Health is looking for premises in Bartholomew Street, including the Kennet Centre, Market Street, Marketplace or Cheap Street. Standing opening hours are proposed for Monday to Friday plus Saturday mornings. It intends to offer a range of enhanced and advanced services. In order to be approved, the pharmacy must offer significant benefits. Although two pharmacies have recently closed in Newbury, Lloyd's in Sainsbury's and Superdrug in Northbrook Street, no gap in provision is judged to have occurred. However, a new pharmacy would improve capacity and choice within the town centre, and it would be in an accessible location. A draft response has been prepared which expresses support for the application, but highlights a number of inaccuracies in the application. So that's kind of the key summaries, and I just would like to draw the board's attention to the recommendations in point 2 of the report.
Thank you. Do any David Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Just with my Newbury Town Council hat on, we had a discussion about this at the Planning and Highways meeting the other night in the wake of this application. we wouldn't necessarily accept that there's no gap in provision in Newbury. In fact, my part of town in the south west is relatively well catered for, but even there, because you've got the Falkland pharmacy and you've got Boots at the retail park, and as was mentioned just now, we've also got the Tesco not too far away in Greenham. But actually, elsewhere in Newbury, the coverage is thin. You've got Boots and not much else, unless you go to Strawberry Hill. And I can hear something in the background, Chair. I don't know if that's somebody having a separate conversation. In Clay Hill, which is a very large area, a very large ward in Newbury, there's nothing at all. There's no provision at all. You have to go to Strawberry Hill. And again, that's not open. I believe that's not open at weekends. So we sort of feel that this any extra provision is very necessary. And I would strongly support the recommendation to welcome this new application and improve services, especially as we're being told that pharmacists have an increasingly important role to play because they can take some of the pressure off GPs. And if you can't, if you can't get an appointment at your GP, you can at least go to your pharmacy. But people aren't going to be doing that if they've got to queue up for half an hour, particularly older people with mobility problems, etc. So I do think this is reversing an unfortunate trend in that somebody actually wants to come and open a new one. So let us, providing they meet all the criteria, let's welcome it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Gary Paulson.
Thank you. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with what David's just said. Because we have lost the recent provision in the town centre, but also we lost one year before last, actually, in Bartholomew Street as well, the Lloyd's chemist there. And as I said, there's nothing to the north of town apart from the Strawberry Hill practice. And I think, and whilst maybe from a statutory perspective, there may not appear to be a gap, there evidently is. I mean, my own chemist in Boots, they're under immense pressure. The waiting times there are unacceptable. And there's a very, very quick turnover of staff as well. I guess they're relying on locums or temps, and I'm not quite sure. But all these things are really impinging on people's, reasonable expectations of a reasonably quick and efficient service. So I think we should wholeheartedly welcome this new application and do anything that the council can do actually to encourage them and help them, particularly if there are any planning barriers, to actually get it open. I think it's a really important move.
Thank you. Fiona Werby.
Hello there. Hi, yes, I think it would be very beneficial to the town to have another pharmacy opening. Obviously in Health Watch, our remit is to hear public feedback. We are getting quite a lot of calls and emails about the pharmacy provisions at the moment. People are struggling, and also the NHS want to be pushing out next year all of the new services that the pharmacies are able to do, but at the moment they can't do them. They're really struggling. So it's all very well having the new services being pushed out to the public, but if the public cannot access them and the pharmacies are unable to cope currently, with the medication issues that are going on nationally, the issues of the people wait times for the medications, all sorts of things are happening at the moment. So I really believe that another pharmacy in the town will absolutely ease the pressure. And hearing the public, what they're saying, this is what they would want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Murphy.
Thanks, Chairman. Just to support really what other people have said about this. I mean, it's interesting because obviously when we talk about this provision, and we've had a number of conversations, unfortunately, over the last 12 months about pharmacy provision, and it's not normally been in a good direction of travel. But there is something about access for people, and access isn't just about the distance from their home or wherever it is. The access is the ability to find the time to have the conversations with the pharmacist that we're being encouraged to have. And where you have these very, very busy pharmacies, the remaining ones very busy, quite often with long queues, I think there's a lot of pressure on people basically to just get in there, pick up their prescription, move on. And obviously the pharmacies themselves are very, very busy to have those conversations. So I think anything that increases the capacity basically to enable the pharmacists to do the role that is envisaged for them, I think has to be welcomed, and more provision, I think, probably will go in some way to assisting with that. So I very much would want to see us support this.
Thank you. And one of the things about this new application is that it's be fairly close to the Kennet Centre car park, so there'll be provide access not only to places in Newbury but places further afield too. So, Dr. Heike.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, April, for the report. As I declared up front, one of the local GPs, and so certainly declaring an interest in how this affects not just my practice, as in the building, but me as a GP and the patients I see, and us as a population living within Berkshire West. I'd like to ask the question. So there was 21 pharmacies at the start when the PNA was assessed. We are now 5 pharmacies down, a quarter, and that does not include all the reduction in hours of all the surrounding pharmacies. All these things should be seen as accumulative. And I would challenge point B and the recommendations, seeing that it does not pose a gap, or, you know, is that just right now? Are we thinking strategically of next year or the next however many years for our patients? So that's a question. And then what I'd like to say is, Helen Clark spoke of the primary care strategy. A key part of that is access. Access is what all of us want, better access to GP practices. And our community pharmacies have put their hand up to step up and be part of primary care. So not GP, but part of primary care to help improve appointment structures. So it is not just a matter of getting your prescriptions, and we've been highlighted in difficulty in people waiting, and, you know, that's just getting your usual prescription. And what we've been promised is that community pharmacies will be able to help us with 7 minor ailments in the coming year. And how do we help facilitate this? Because for there to be better GP appointments, it's reliant on these extra resources. And I would challenge us as a board to think, are we thinking strategically enough for our Berkshire West population? As I was driving in this morning, noticing building works going up, who fills those new buildings? It's young families. And when we look at minor ailments and easier access, these are the people that's going to need it. So if we say this is sufficient for now, are we catering for next year and the next few years? Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to propose an amendment to the recommendation?
I think that as part of what is being discussed there is they're saying that Bob is looking at community pharmacy alongside primary care. There's a piece of work that is going on there to look at the needs. So not just, as was pointed out, not just the distance to your community pharmacy, but what services, what more is expected from them. I think those things need to be taken into consideration when we're saying our current provision is sufficient. So I would like that to be taken into consideration.
So perhaps we need to kind of think of changing the wording of item B in the recommendation. So under the current regime, there's no gap. But what we're saying is that the distance from a pharmacy is not sufficient, because we're talking about some of the pharmacies becoming overloaded.
And quality of service, Chairman. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Heather.
Thank you, Chair. You know, one of the things that hasn't been mentioned that's on here is about the closure of the Boots chemist in Thatcham. That queues regularly out the door, and that's just not going to be there. There are 2 other chemists in Thatcham. There's not one in the town centre itself. So, you know, I think there is a gap. A lot of people, mentioned, Dave Marsh mentioned Clay Hill. I think a lot of people go from that area into Thatcham to get prescriptions. So I think there is a gap, and I think we should be recognising that.
Thank you. I've heard over the last several months a lot of concerns about queues at that Boots pharmacy, and people queuing for well over an hour quite regularly, and so that's going to obviously put pressure on the other 2 pharmacies in Thatcham and perhaps elsewhere. And one of the concerns I have is that as the pharmacies get bigger and the queues get longer, people are going to be inclined to go to online pharmacies, and which is going to, take business away from these the community pharmacies, and they're going to get more pressure on closures. And also for the smaller ones, when people they rely on for their income on selling other things like shampoo and this kind of cosmetics and so on. But if you look in the door and there's a long queue, then you're going to go to the local supermarket and buy those instead, rather than going into the pharmacy, which is going to make the pharmacies even less financially viable, if I can get the words out. So can anybody kind of suggest perhaps a change to the wording of item B in the recommendation? April.
So just to say, in terms of this, obviously when we do our analysis, we are using statutory situation, and we're using the legislation and the guidance. So that's what we've made the decision on, and we've looked at that, and based on that, on those criteria, there isn't a gap. I take on board what everyone's saying, but that is the criteria that we've used to assess this situation. So I suppose if we were saying that we were going to look at something else, that's outside the remit of the guidance and the legislation that we just think it's important to flag that criteria would we use, because there is set criteria, and that's our role in assessing against those criteria.
On the recommendation I have here, there's an additional recommendation that I should write to the Primary Care Support England on behalf of the board in support of this unforeseen benefits application, perhaps, and also to express our concern about the fact that for various reasons we have a significant number of pharmacy closures, and concerns that's putting on the load on the remaining pharmacies and on waiting times. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. What I'd like to point out is, what is our strategic plan? Because we've got a Bob strategic plan for the next 5 years, which includes community pharmacy. So although it might be what is legislatively required of us, but then we should also be thinking strategically, what does our population need and how are we going to best serve them to live well and thrive? So I would think that is a challenge, and I don't have all the answers to it, but I would say that is a challenge. The other thing of note is, it was a 6 o'clock news bulletin probably a month ago that there will be 300 Boots closures across England. Our Boots in Thatcham is one of them. What if next month we find out it's the Boots on Northbrook Street? It's completely plausible. These closures are expected until April. So it's still in a state of flux. Thanks.
Thank you. Helen Clark.
Yeah, so I was just going to add to that really along similar lines. I mean, obviously there is a statutory position as April has outlined. And I think also of note to the comments from the LPC in the paper with regards to dispensing volumes and adequacy of provision. But notwithstanding that, I think there is an action and perhaps it's something that we need to build into the recommendation on 6.2 to align our thinking with the emerging primary care strategy and the model of community pharmacy that is likely to outline, and making sure that as well as considering the statutory position through the PNA, that we are also considering whether we are confident that we've got the capacity and resilience within pharmacies to take forward that model once it's been articulated further. And I think perhaps 6.2 and the item on the resilience of pharmacies covers that to some degree, but perhaps it could be expanded to also take account of the primary care strategy.
Any other? Oh, sorry, Fiona.
Hello, yes. Just to say that with regard to the public feedback that we've been receiving at Healthwatch, we will be looking into doing a piece of work around pharmacies in the new year. So just to let you know, really, that will be something that we'll be venturing into next year. So if you have any questions or queries about that, please do let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this board did ask if Healthwatch could carry out a survey to kind of ascertain waiting times, basically, because we have a lot of complaints, but of course it's much easier if you have a scientific results for scientific survey. Thank you. Gary Paulson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think most has been said now, but I think we did also, I think I proposed actually that the chairman of the Health and Wellbeing Board back in April before the elections write to the statutory body as well. So I'm not quite sure what the outcome of that was because he certainly agreed to do it. But I think I sympathise with April's perspective on this, but I think we should be challenging the guidance now because clearly it's not fit for purpose and it's not really reflecting what's going on in the high street. And I think clearly what the businesses are doing are trying to drive everything online, which suits their business model perhaps, but not the patients. So I think we should be vigorous and supportive of getting this next one open and challenge any other potential closures as firmly as we can.
Thank you. But could I suggest then that we'll put the recommendation as set out, but with this additional thing about writing in support of this unexpected, unforeseen application, but also to write to the Primary Care Support England, expressing our concerns about the guidance for the needs assessment and emphasising the fact that as demand. As pharmacies close, that the demands on the remaining ones will increase, which is going to make it more difficult for this pharmacy first thing that's planned for the new year to actually be successful. Could I put that to the board present in the room? Could you indicate? Oh, could I have a seconder, please? I've proposed that from there. Seconded by Heather. Could I have those in favour, please? Anybody against? So that's carried. Thank you very much. Sorry, David, I didn't see you. So item 11 is delivery plan progress report. Could I invite David Wright to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is a report about the progress of one of the items on the plan, which is around helping children and families in the early years. It is the work of the Early Help and Prevention Partnership group, which is focusing on children. You'll note within the report there is an update around the work that's undertaken within the group and the actions that the group has been progressing. You'll find that in paragraph 4.5 and then the items below that. And in 4.6, the items that are continuing to be progressed as part of the action plan. A couple of things probably worth noting. There is a new group, an early years inequalities group that's been formed. That group is a very welcome addition that is driving forward work particularly focused on closing the gap and addressing work in the first 1,001 days, which is very welcome. On the 24th of November, the Health and Wellbeing Board held a hot focus session looking at children's early health and prevention work. That was a useful meeting. Over 20 colleagues attended that meeting to understand the work that was happening in that space and to make recommendations and suggestions about how we could progress some of the work of that group. The next meeting of the Children's Early Health and Prevention Partnership is on Monday, where we will look to progress more of those matters. There is an appendices which has just got an example of some of the work around parenting that is taking place, which you will be able to find on page 73 and 74. And the detail around the actions that are underway can be found on pages 72 and 73.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions or comments, please? Thank you. I did find that, sorry, I was just going to say, I did find that hot focus session very, very interesting and illuminating. Thank you. Joanne.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I'm sorry. I have my back to you, but if I turn away from the microphone, then no one will hear. I find all of this really fascinating and I think really interesting. Some of the training that's being done around conflict, which I think is extremely important, and certainly the devastation that sort of conflict in relationships can cause to children in their early years, and therefore, and I see some of this in my day job working in a charity that works with children, mostly affected by bereavement, but sometimes the conflict that comes into that realm at the same time can be so harmful as well. But my point was actually about I'm gonna bang the digital drum, I suppose, or knock the digital drum. So I noticed that there is some good stuff being done about creating parenting information on the website and within the West Berks directory. And I guess my question is, what are the plans to support and reach those families who are not digitally enabled or for whatever reason, perhaps English isn't their first language? How will we reach those parents and give them all this good information that you want to share?
Very good point. We are seeking to find touch points where families engage with sort of universal services, whether that be through health appointments, library appointments, going into nurseries or primary schools, and essentially getting material to them in a form that they can access and understand. We have ability to translate documents into 76 different languages. So we can be really quite bespoke around whichever the either predominant languages or relevant languages are around that material and that publicity. But it's an ongoing process. So we just need to keep on keeping on. So we're making sure that we're making that information available at the right time, in the right place, to the right people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, very good point. And sounds like we have a solution to it, which is great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, please? Okay, thank you very much, David. Can we move on then to item 12, please? The Better Care Fund. Could I ask Paul Coe to present this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. You'll see from the papers that there's a fair amount of detail accompanying the report. Essentially, this is one to note. It's part of our standard reporting requirements under the Better Care Fund. The good news is that we are currently looking like we're on track to meet the targets relating to the 5 metrics. You might want to note that the report says the good news is that we've got vibrant domiciliary care market, which hasn't always been the case over the last few years, but it's currently holding, which we're very pleased with. But it recognises also the demand pressures which continue, and in particular the number of clients coming into adult social care from the hospital route on pathway 3, which is where somebody comes out and goes into a placement. So we'd like that number to be, it's universally accepted that that number should be as low as possible, but it's difficult to achieve, particularly where we are trying to achieve quick discharges. But otherwise, broadly, as I say, a report to note indicating good progress.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments, please, from board members? Dr. Harkey.
Paul, I'd just like to say thank you. I really have good faith in this Better Care Fund investment from especially a health and care, like you said earlier, that working closer together, getting the correct health group out to people in need. And it is really reassuring to hear that you feel very optimistic regarding the care available going into the winter for patients that might need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or points? Thank you. So we now have some items which are for information, really. Item 14, the Berkshire West Safeguarding. Sorry, what is something? Oh, I beg your pardon. Item 13, the Health and Wellbeing Board Annual Conference. Could I ask April Pebbody to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So it's come to that time of year again when we need to think about our annual conference for the Health and Wellbeing Board. So this report just provides an update on planning for the 2024 Health and Wellbeing Board Conference. So just some key points from the conference report are, this is an annual event that is open to residents as well as board members and partners, with over 100 people registering for each of the last 3 years. So we've had a very good response to our conference previously. The last event was run in a hybrid format, and it is proposed that we retain this model. Although the council chamber has its limitations, it is considered to be the most suitable location, particularly for a hybrid event, given that we do not currently have any budget for hiring another venue at present. We are looking at a date towards the end of April. The proposed theme is primary care and community outreach, with presentations on the new Health and Wellbeing Board performance dashboard, outcomes from recent hot focus sessions, general practice, including the ICB's new primary care strategy, pharmacy outlining challenges and opportunities locally and studies by the ICB and Health Watch, dentistry outlining challenges and opportunities facing NHS dental services, explaining the commissioning role of the ICB and describing how patients are being supported. Also, an item on CVD outreach, that's cardiovascular disease outreach, promoting the work of the new outreach service, which we're hoping to launch in January, all being well. There will be panel discussions to ensure interaction with the audience. There will also be a marketplace of stalls with representation from service providers. So that's the kind of proposed format. However, obviously, bringing that today to see what everyone's thoughts are on that, whether everyone agrees that that's the way forward or whether we should be focusing on some other things. And obviously, Sean has raised today about cost of living, whether that's something that again should be included as part of the conference. So it's really just to start a discussion on what everyone feels about the report and what you might like to do with the conference.
Thank you. So any board members have any questions? Paul.
A comment rather than a question. Yeah, I think we've probably all got things in our minds which we could talk about at this sort of event. I think it's really difficult to get it down to a core set of items, and I'm supportive of the ones that have been selected. As I say, we can't cover it all, and this looks like a fair list to me.
Thank you. Gary Paulson.
Well, I'd just like really to sort of come back to our earlier comments about poverty, I suppose, the cost of living as an issue itself. We're looking at health and well-being in those, a real sense of the words.
Okay, thank Dr. Heike.
Thank you, April. I think it looks like a really good combination of things, and I would particularly like it because it's got a CVD focus, and one of my hats that I wear is a Bob CVD lead. I think it's an ideal opportunity for us in West Berkshire to promote well-being, and that is through that well-being outreach program that I think is a big game changer, and it's going to help address inequalities, Gary, to focus on that. So I'd be really keen for that to be something that we champion. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I obviously raised the issue earlier on, and that Gary's just picked up, but I can see from the paper and listening to what Paul said, actually, basically this collection of subjects hangs together as a cohesive group of subjects for a conference. I just wonder whether there is scope, Bill, to find some other forum to have a broader discussion about this issue of poverty and health. If this isn't the right forum, or this isn't because obviously I can see that basically it would look unusual on that particular agenda, given that basically there is a theme to the agenda. I just wonder whether we could look at the options around that going forward, because I do feel that there are so many conversations going on, and they really need to be aired. And we need to look at that.
April.
Thank you, Sean. So if it's felt that it's not best to talk about that at the conference, obviously it will come into the subject areas in many places, I think, through the presentations that we'll do on the day and the discussions we have. I wonder whether we could have a hot focus session on this. I know it's normally the subgroups that bring the hot focus session, but we could be a bit evolutionary and say that we could have a hot focus session on this topic, which I think would be really beneficial and worthwhile.
Thank you. I think it's a very good suggestion. Thank you. Yeah, something we should be scheduling, perhaps some urgency. Thank you. Helen.
Thank you. Yeah, I would support that suggestion of a hot focus session on the topic of the link between poverty and health. And I just wanted to say, with regard to the agenda proposed, really just to say, April, happy to work with you and pull in the appropriate people from the ICB to support the primary care elements.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Move on to item 14, which is for information, the report from the Berkshire West Safeguarding Children's Partnership. But this is for information. But are there any comments anybody wishes to make? We'll move on to item 15, the subgroup updates provided for information. Does anybody have any comments on those? Yeah. Move on then to item 16, members' questions. Do we have any members' questions, please?
No, Chairman, no questions received.
Thank you. Yes, in that case, move on to item 17, the Health and Wellbeing Board Forward Plan. So the board has asked to note the forward plan and and it suggests to any changes or additions. Paul Coe.
I was looking in your broad direction, Helen. I'm mindful of the engagement relating to transforming primary care and whether we've got enough space on the agenda for that, or whether we should make a particular item relating to it. I know it sort of fits with the timeline, doesn't it, in terms of January, February engagement?
Yeah, it does. So the engagement phase runs till the end of January. So yeah, there is a draft of the strategy due to be published in December. But my understanding is that the engagement will be open till that point. But yeah, so early in the new year, I think it would be good to have an item bringing some feedback on that. And also, you know, sort of further information around the development of the strategy itself.
Thank you. Any other? Sean Murphy, please.
Sorry, I'll make this the last thing I say today, Chair. I just had a thought about something for the forward plan in terms of the fact that as a service, we've done a lot of work over the years around tobacco and alcohol and young people. But obviously there is a subject now which is quite prominent in the work that is carried out, not just by us, but by other organisations as well, and that is around young people and vaping. It's quite a topical subject, and I do wonder basically whether it would be something we could look to bring to the board and have a discussion about the work that's going on, whether there are other things we could look to do, and around some of the proposed controls as well that have been looked at as part of national policy.
Thank you. I think that's a very good suggestion. As you said, it's very topical at the moment, and seems to be a major issue that seems to be getting worse. Councillor Stewart.
Could we add into that something, and I might be very late to the party, but I received through my door, goodness knows how I got on this mailing list, for something called heated tobacco technology, which apparently is the new thing. It's not as bad as smoking, it's cheaper than smoking, but it is still smoking. And so this particular, I believe it's a brand, so I apologise to the brand. I'm not trying to publicise them in any way, or indeed, it's just for information. And I think it's called Plume, PLOOM. So if we are going to be talking about our tobacco products, this would potentially appeal to younger people because they say it's cheaper. And I'm quite horrified by it, to be perfectly honest. I can send you the details, Sean, if that would be of interest.
It's a really, sorry, Chair, it's a really good point actually you made, because there was an article, funny enough, on the news this morning about certainly one of the tobacco companies almost kind of moving away from traditional tobacco products and moving towards vaping products and the type of heated tobacco products that you're talking about. I think it's just I don't know when the last time it was kind of aired at this board, but I think there is something, a discussion really about, in particularly in the context of young people, around all of this.
Thank you. I think that's a very good suggestion. Yeah, there was a full page advert in, I think it was yesterday's Times, by one of the large tobacco companies saying how they support controls on tobacco and then that they're moving into vaping. So yes, I think that's a very good point. Something we should be looking at. Any other suggestions? Yeah, well, thank you for that, Sean and Joanne. Just leaves us to note the meeting dates for future meetings. So the next meeting is scheduled for the 22nd of February. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending and for their contributions, and we'll close the meeting. Thank you. But if you could remain in place until the live streaming is finished, please.